Do you think it's the last question, I promise on this? Do you think it's possible, had you carved off the car business, I mean, it may have been impossible, I don't know, you would take an investment, in the long term, it would have made money, it would have made a return. And I just have this hunch that the Dyson car would have been an absolutely massive contributor to. Is there any lingering tiny sliver of regret that you didn't become the person who was fronting that very important new market?
No, I mean, I'm really disappointed we had to stop it because we were very passionate about it and it was very exciting. But there's another point, which is that these new technology batteries, solid state batteries we developed, I mean, they require billions of investment to get them, put them into production. And we're doing that now. And I also thought I couldn't do both the battery and the car without bringing in lots of investors. And I didn't want to bring in investors who might lose money. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, well,
I lost my own money. I lost my own money, and that doesn't matter. But I don't want to lose other people's money. I've had investors in the past. I've had investors in the past, so I know how it feels. I've worked for a public company, and I've had a private company with other investors, and I don't want any of that again.
Can I ask just a personal question? And then I'm going to open it up for some wonderful questions coming in on the Q&A. Just give us a brief oversight of the most euphoric you've been in your professional career and the lowest point you've ever had in your professional career. What were those two?
I'll do the lowest points first, is when you find that you've gone through all this, you made a success of it, got it on the market, made it work, and you start having plagiarists, people copying it. That's really depressing. And high points are, the highest point I think was when I paid off the overdraft. Having had an overdraft for 48 years and taken all these risks to then pay off the overdraft and actually be making money. That's exciting. Really exciting. Huge relief for Deirdre as well.
Of course. That was marvelous, absolutely marvelous. I just on the passion, James, I must tell you that the first time we met, I was researching my book Black Box Thinking, and we sat in your office, and it started in the afternoon, and by the time the conversation finished, it was so dark that we could scarcely see each other. And I never believed that anybody could make me passionate about the question of dust and air. And listening to you, I went back and I actually think I found some of the early papers of R.G. Dorman and the equations that he had put together. I became completely obsessed. And you do have this infectious ability to inspire fascination in things. I do hope the engineering, the university is the success I'm sure it can be. But let me go to the wonderful questions here from people who are tuning in. The first one is from Peter. I quite like this one. What item do you wish you had invented or improved?
I mean, I write about quite a lot of my heroes in the book, and the greatest one I think is Frank Whittle with the jet engine. I wish I'd done that. But boy, I mean, he was up against it. I mean, he wrote this. He was at Cranwell, RAF Cranwell, and he wrote the thesis for a jet engine. He said, it can go 50,000 feet, which existing planes can't. There's no vibration, one moving part. It's unlimited speed. I mean, it was the most, and it's written in a sort of child's exercise book with actually slightly childish handwriting, and it's absolutely wonderful. And he had this ability to get things right. I mean, not only did he think on this sort of scale, but he didn't have that many failures in his book. He didn't have 5,126 failures. He got it right pretty well first time. He was utterly brilliant.
And then actually you have, you may have mentioned this in the answer. I was looking at the question, so forgive me if you already have, but I think at Malmesbury, you have one of the,
We've got one of the very first prototypes that was actually sent to Canada for cold weather testing. It didn't work very well. The fuel system didn't work very well. And our engineers here, who are passionate about running it and repairing, discovered that it wasn't done to his original design. It was a RollsRoyce design, not his. So we built his design, and it now works brilliantly.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is from Robin Clark. Robin Clark. What do you consider the role of education to be in the development of the next generation of engineering talent? Are we on the right path, or do we need more transformative change?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think if we can encourage more people at school to read science and engineering and not regard it as a hard subject, but a subject where you can experiment and learn, and to learn viscerally and then understand why you need to learn the theory. So maybe we could teach it better in schools. And actually, we've just built a STEAM building at Gresham School, and it'll be very interesting to see how, so where we've got science and technology and art, physics and chemistry, all in the same building. So it'll be very interesting to see how, whether we can turn and have science seen as a creative thing for children to do. So I'd love children not to see it as a hard subject, to see it as a fascinating subject where you can solve real world problems. Right. And then in what we've done here, we started our own university here at Joe Johnson's suggestion. Our undergraduates work with our engineers 3 days a week, and then they do 2 days academic. And it's a 4-year course, and it's 47-week year, not the 22-week year in a normal university. So it's intense. They get a lot of education, but better than that, they're working with practicing engineers and scientists all day long, learning from them. And they're actually very stimulating to our slightly older engineering and scientists, because they ask questions, some of them very naive, but naive questions are good. Naive questioning is the most interesting sort of question, challenging existing dogma. It's good.
I mean, on that point, James, do you think secondary school education, I mean, often people are examined on the extent to which they can regurgitate the information that they have been taught, often closed questions in exams, things like chemical formulae and things of that kind. And I wonder whether you had any thoughts about secondary school education and how learning by doing, asking rather than answering questions, testing hypotheses. Do you have a sort of a hunch of how that might look and how?
Well, I think you've almost answered the question. I mean, I think people should almost be marked on how many failures they've made, how many experiments they've done, not whether they can remember and regurgitate things, because it's that experiencing is such fun. It's what it's all about. And life isn't about remembering all the things you learned in textbooks. Life is about creating something, doing something different.
Thank you. There's a question from Sam Habib. He says, James, thank you very much for this discussion. You've designed during a period of great technological advances and an age of other great designers. He asks, do you feel competitive or friendly with the likes of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates? And were any of these in the computational space inspirational to your thinking and designs?
Well, they were contemporaries of mine, really. Rather, so they weren't inspirations, because they were doing their things while I was doing my things. But earlier people were inspirations. I mean, André Citroën in his heyday with their creative and unconventional car design. And visionary car design, actually. I mean, the original DS with its suspension and hydraulic pneumatic system that did the suspension, steering, and the brakes as all as one system in the early 50s, it wasn't copied by other manufacturers for about 50 or 60 years. So he, Honda with his iterative improvements, that he was a huge inspiration. And then, of course, Sony, Akio Morita at Sony with the Walkman. And that's a Walkman is a lovely example of, I'm going to make a tape recorder that doesn't record. It's not going to have all these devices that you have to have. It's just simply going to play music back. And having the bravery to go out and market that. And again, everybody said it wouldn't sell. And as we know, I mean, the rest is history. It's a huge, huge success. So those are the sort of heroes. People who gave me such encouragement to believe in engineering as a way of making a wonderful product that people will want.
Thank you. There's a question from an anonymous attendee about the future of technology. How do you see it progressing? I think I'm right in saying that at the Dyson University, one of the areas of research and learning is artificial intelligence. How do you see machine learning, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, neural networks and other things of this kind shaping and reshaping societies and other related technologies?
Well, I mean, of course, it is the future, and there's all sorts of other things. Well, vision systems. No, I mean, we're using it already. Robotics and robotics is going to be hugely important, but it isn't just obvious things like robots. Even our electric motors use artificial intelligence to operate. So yes, I mean, those are all really exciting areas. And what's interesting is that when I started, you just had to be a mechanical engineer, okay, maybe an electrical engineer, but now we need so many disciplines, and that's why we need so many engineers now, and why research is so expensive, and for that matter, time-consuming, because in a way it's wonderful. You need all these huge number of disciplines all working together to make a product work. And it's slightly frightening because it's nothing like as simple as it used to be. But on the other hand, the products are getting ever more powerful in what they can do, and thankfully using far fewer resources, and hopefully last longer.
There's a wonderful question here from Arthur, who is 14 years of age. And he says, James, do you have any advice for an entrepreneurial young person still at school?
Yes. Be an engineer or a scientist. It's great fun, and you can pursue it as a passion, and you'll have. Incidentally, the Exeter University did research on which professions were happiest, and the happiest profession are engineers. Medics are about in the middle, and guess who came bottom? Journalists.
Table tennis players?
Table tennis players and journalists.
Do you know, I wonder whether, James, wonder whether one of the reasons for this is that engineers can see the output of what they produce. There's a very clear connection between what they put in and what they get out. I mean, the fact that you are so satisfied about being able to build a prototype and to see it work in this very atomistic world we live in, a lot of people are just particular bits in this big assembly line of capitalism. They don't often see the impact of what they do on technology or on consumers. What's your reasoning for why engineers are so happy?
I think it's because it's a life of dissatisfaction. You're never content. You're solving problems all day long, and actually that's fascinating and hugely enjoyable. You're achieving something. You're advancing something. You're advancing technology, or making a better product, or making a product do something no one else has made it do before, or a technology do something, and that is hugely rewarding personally. Never mind if it makes money or even actually benefits other people, but it's hugely rewarding for you as the person making it happen.
Fully understood. I think that's a great explanation, better than my rather inarticulate attempt. But journalists at the bottom, that's interesting. I've really enjoyed journalism. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. The last question here, the last question, James. I think maybe the reason I enjoy journalism. Anyway, this is about you, not me. But let me ask you one from Brandon, and he asks, would you ever look at joining Richard Branson or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos in the space race to land mankind on Mars, or new products for the inevitable space era? Is this something you're interested in?
No, not at all. No, I'm interested in doing ordinary, mundane things here on Earth.
Do you know, it's funny, James, because the vacuum cleaner a lot of people thought that was unsexy, didn't they? I think that's maybe one reason why. But you're into things that you feel. The word you used a couple of times was unsatisfactory. The existing technology was unsatisfactory. You like to turn the unsatisfactory into the excellent.
Yes, yes. Like all the engineers here are like that. I mean, the things we use every day that don't work very well make them work better. Yes, I mean the analogy I've often used is that vacuum cleaners aren't very interesting. You don't think that the person who's designed and made that vacuum cleaner had much enthusiasm for it. Whereas if you look at a skateboard or a surfing board or a windsurfer or something like that, you can see that they were designed and made by enthusiasts. So, I mean, we're enthusiasts for vacuum cleaners and hair dryers and lights and purifiers. That's what we love making. We want to make them exciting and enjoyable products.
Well, if I may say so, as a consumer of your products, many of them, you have made them exciting. I have been very excited by this conversation, James. It's been a real fascinating journey through a fascinating life and some incredible technologies. I think the thing that I'm left with is you've had an enjoyable and fulfilled life, which is the most important thing of all. And I hope the 179 people who have stayed with us all the way through this virtual event have enjoyed that as much as I have. And if I may, at this point, James, thank you again, and bring it to an end.
Thank you. It's great to be talking to you again, and thank you to all the people who've listened and asked such wonderful questions. So thank you very much indeed.